Hi students, this is Mrs. Vignell with the instructional video on your positive and negative communications. I do have an apology for the delay in delivering this. You may pause the video to read my apology. Otherwise, is an error in the draft that I'll point out. The green highlight means that is an example of what should be emulated. So going into the first example, the first thing that I do commend students for is spelling the person's name correct and spelling the name of the address of their email. They should have been the same, but I made the typo. So for those students who spelled Lord, L-O-U-R-D-E, and then the email address, S-L-O-U-R-E-D, I commend you for paying close attention to the details. Some students didn't pick up on that. You do need to spend particular attention to details when writing any kind of correspondence to make sure that you have the person's name spelled right along with their email address. This particular Dear Miss Lord or Dear Mr. Lord, it had the comma before and it should have the colon. It should be considered a formal email, so please use the colon in business writing. The highlighted I am writing this letter is a practice of redundancy. Your name is on the email. You are the one writing it. You do not need to tell your reader that you are writing it. Remember, business communication is concise, so any place that you can reduce redundancy, you write more concisely. Some students started the letter with, I am contacting you, which is a less redundant way to begin. So I am contacting you on behalf of my Uncle Dan works a lot better than I'm writing this letter. And it's an email. Okay. Something that this student did really well is they included the apartment and the address of the apartment in Las Vegas. So you should remember that if you're writing to a building owner, more than likely they have more than one building. And it would save time probably by including the address. So those of you who did not include the address, you probably will get a follow-up email saying, which building does your relative live at? The student also was correct in not capitalizing coronavirus. I wanted to point this out. To check if you are not sure if something is a proper noun, then please Google it. I do it all the time. Practice using the correct terms in your business communication. For this particular letter, I wanted to call attention to the use of kinship names, and I have put it down here below a bracket. It says when to use them. So essentially, you know that you capitalize proper nouns, and names are proper nouns, so that's why you capitalize them. Anytime that you're going to use a kinship name as their name. So if I were to say uncle as my uncle's name, then it would be capitalized. But if you're referring to the relationship as being your uncle, like my uncle, then you would not. This particular email did not have the statement that requested 24-hour turnaround, and it was missing the required statement. A number of other correspondents did not have those things. I will not point them out again. You'll notice that they're highlighted. Make sure that you do what the instructions have asked you to do. I did ask you to make sure that this happened within 24 hours, and then make sure to have your statement, of course. Take a look at the claim letter rubrics. There's one rubric that the department will use if yours is selected to be assessed by the department. And then there is my rubric, which will apply to points in the class, which is less finicky and less particular than the department's. The next one here is this particular student didn't proofread enough. They spelled their first name incorrect, the last name incorrectly, but did get the email address correct. So make sure you pay those details. I wanted to call attention to the use of M dashes, which is what the student was trying to do. And I have put it here in this bracket, this matter of using an M dash. An em dash is a longer hyphen, and you create it in Word by typing 2 hyphens. It also functions as, it's essentially a bullhorn or neon lights with a band playing in the background. I'll change this to playing. So I do think that that is the intention of what the student was trying to do when they did this. So possible, and then preferably within the next 24 hours. So that's essentially what this dash says. It's like in your face kind of thing. Okay. If you want to be less in your face, you would use the commas. And I give you the example here. And then, or the parentheses, which basically says that you can skip the information, which you would not want to do in this correspondence. They did state that they want the 24 hours, so that is what I asked you to do. Another place of redundancy is if you have placed your phone number underneath your name for contact information, if you include it in the body of your email, it's redundant, so it's not as concise as you could be. Same thing with the email. Placing your email under as contact information underneath your name works well, but if you have it here and you place it in your correspondence, then you are taking up room unnecessarily. So in this particular one, they did get the spelling of the names correct, but they did do the redundancy. And here they didn't tell which senior housing in Las Vegas. So just, you're going to have to try to think about these things. This was not something that I told you to do, but it is a part of critical thinking and thinking about what the reader would need. I do later on talk about, make sure that when you, I do down here below, remember to consider how much information is needed by your reader in order to get done what you've asked them to get done, but also to consider what details a writer does not need. Okay, so in these scenarios that Guffey and Lowy provide you, they provide you with an awful lot of details, intentionally to see, can you pick out the ones that are necessary for the correspondence that you're writing, because you do not do a data dump with your reader. You think about, do they need this information in order to do what I'm asking them to do or to satisfy their request. Don't put everything into your communication. So this one did not, let's see here, this particular student did correct punctuation by using a semicolon with the therefore, which is a adverb conjunctive. So kudos for that correct punctuation, correct use of the semicolon. The other way to have done it would have been to put a period after disease and capitalize therefore. If you don't know what I'm talking about, then please Google punctuation used with therefore, however, consequently, and you'll come up with a couple videos of how to use it. The best way is to avoid this is just not to use semicolons and just use the period. That would be the easier way. I do like that the student was quite savvy. They said, please contact me or by phone or email. Then they provided their phone and their email at underneath their name. The next couple of examples I'm giving you is to the employee who emotionally sent an email to her supervisor within an hour after meeting for the 90-day review. So my counsel here is not to respond to emotional rants. My counsel also is not to send an email when you are upset and emotional, especially soon after receiving news. You should pause, you should wait, let yourself adjust to what has been said, and then write the email. Or better yet, in this particular one, you probably would have wanted to go in and talk face-to-face with your supervisor rather than send them an email. Down here, I do point out that Guffey and Lowy does said that, it's right here, that Guffey and Lowy points out that you should not put anything in the email that you would not want taped to your front door of your house or apartment, which people from the street could read in their car driving by your place. And emails last forever. So I did do this just to see how you would react and be able to give you this kind of counsel about what you put in an email. I did find that this particular student's email did a lot of things that were well done. I have already uh, edited this, but in their initial email, they actually had the S Lord. They had S Lourd at whatever it was for conlinapartment.com. So they had the incorrect email address. And I did want to show you that you have to be very careful. Down here, I do say that make sure that when you proofread that you start at the very top of your document. Often we only go to the dear so-and-so and proofread from there, but you should start way up with your letterhead address, the date, make sure you've spelt the date correctly, their address. Start at the top of your document and proofread all the way the top down. In this particular one, if it would have been sent to SLord, it would have not gotten to the employee, it would have gotten to somebody else. I did like how they picked a company. They have a company, Stratton Oakmont, and then they created themselves an email for that company. So this the student, the Jane Jayne Doe, right, would have been something like Jane J Doe at StrattonOakmont.com. So that would have been the email, a more appropriate email. So that's why I would highlight this in green now. So you want to make sure that you're addressing your emails to the correct person. And I always test emails to make sure I have the right address, because if you send them to people and people copy them, then an incorrect email can go on for longer than it ever should. This particular email should be kept formal. So the student did have the comma, and I have replaced it with the semicolon, especially in a supervisory role, regardless of whether you are male to female, female to male, or male to male, female to female. You still need to put yourself in the position of being a supervisor, supervising an employee, which requires some distance. So use that colon to represent some formality. I've already commented on how I liked how they picked the company name. I really wanted to point out how the student actually addressed the tone in this email. I thought that they did this in an excellent manner. You may pause the video to read through it. I thought it was very well said. I would have probably worked on the last sentence a little bit more, but I felt that this was probably the best addressing of the tone and the professional manner that the employee did not use when writing that emotional rant. So good job for that. The highlight here points out a comma that was not put in, talks about it's actually an introductory clause. Whenever you use an if clause, it requires a comma. So you would put that comma in there. And then the student actually did cheers for this particular ending. And cheers, given this situation where you have an emotional, I call emotional email from an upset employee to her supervisor, cheers would be entirely too informal. You'd want to keep it to something that's neutral. So it would be either simply sincerely or cordially or something. I take a look at whatever ending salutation your company uses, professional guidelines in their correspondence. Then, having gone through this course, I would expect that you would set up your own standards of professionalism in your correspondence and follow them. So always keep things professional and somewhat distanced when replying to a employee that you are over, as well as to a manager who is you are under. You want to maintain that professionalism, especially in this age of lawsuits. So in this particular one, to Mr. Doe, It is Ms. Doe, not Mr. Doe, so be careful. So coming to this particular positive message, I did not highlight it because I wanted you to see what happens when you type it into a Word document and you let Word and Grammarly underline the errors in the document. So please don't just type the claim letter into a medium that will not point out your surface errors. You'll see that Word underlined it in red, and then there's blue as well. So you're going to want to go ahead and take a look at these things and correct them. So evaluation, if you would right click it, you would see job evaluation. And then I appreciate your feedback on our evaluation. So when I do this kind of proofreading and taking a look at how Word corrects me, I have actually become a better speller. Not that I'm the best speller, but I become a better speller because I see how it's really spelled and how I spell it. So you should, as you are doing this, take a look at the errors that Word is catching that you make so that you remember the types of errors that you make so that you don't make them in the future. So I apologize for any inconvenience during your training. So, but it looks like you missed offsite training, and you see the blue. If you highlight this, it's going to say trainings, and that's how you would actually say it. It says QuickBook. Now, I think it's QuickBook is correct. So I would come over here and I would just say, I would ignore it. And then here it underlined it is because there's actually there's one extra zero O in there. So you would fix that. Another way that you can do this is you can also highlight what you would want to have corrected. I would probably highlight the entire letter. And then I would come up, you would come up under review, and then you would click over, review. You would come over to spelling and grammar, and then you would have it go through it. So let me widen this up so you can see what it's asking. I can open this up. Maybe I can't. Let me make this smaller so you can see it. So you're going to see QuickBooks, right? QuickBooks. So I would actually go and look online to see which version is correct. Since I don't know, probably the person writing this knew, but so it's probably QuickBooks and then change, and then QuickBooks, and then change, right? And then here, so then it comes down, you can say resume. So evaluation, not evolution, but evaluation, change, intentionally change, unfairness, change, okay? And then down below here, it actually came up with the word hesitate. So you're going to change that as well. So here is the letter after I have run through the spell check. You'll notice that Word no longer has all the red underlines and the blue underlines or any kind of underline you need to pay attention to. So please take the time to proofread what Word points out, what Grammarly would underline and point out to you. Run the spell check, the grammar check, and then you should read it through. I do say down here at the bottom is that all good writers read their writing out loud. So after you have written and drafted the letter and perfected it as much as possible, then you go through and proofread it by spell checking and Grammarly. Then you're going to read it out loud and you're going to make sure that it makes sense. So I won't take the time to read this particular letter out loud, but you should sit back, give yourself a break before, and then read it out loud and make sure that it makes sense. Okay? All good writers do this. I do want to point out that the claim letter assignment is one of the 5 assignments under the writing assignments, which is worth 10% of your grade. I must apply the department mandated criteria toward surface errors, which means that for every surface error that you make in your claim letter, I must minus either 5 points or 3 points. So you want to get it as after addressing the need, communicating to the readers what they need to hear in order to accomplish the goal that's set out in the assignment, then you're going to need to proofread and proofread to make sure that you don't have any, that would be your goal, to have any surface errors, because I certainly don't want to take off points in your claim letter. So that was the end of the comments that I had on the positive and negative communication practice that you did in the discussion board. If you have any questions, you're going to let me know. That's it. Bye-bye.